Hey, beautiful. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm fantastic, feeling really glorious with the spring energy.
Yeah, and you just got back from Maui, so you've got a glow about you and you just look beautiful today.
Oh, thank you. I was thinking the same thing about you.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. Can you introduce yourself for our listeners?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. My name is Denell Barbara, and I am a women's wellness and health coach. I work with wild women and women who are looking to connect more deeply with their body and the magic and power of specifically what I call their sacred female anatomy, and all the wonderful power that emerges when we dive deep into this place within our body of our pelvis, and how this connects to our place in the world and who we are. So, yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Amazing. And we have so many things that we can dive into. And what I would love to start with is your journey into this work. And I know you obviously work a lot with like the voice of the cervix and like that sacred anatomy that you mentioned. And I would love to hear like, I know that there's like a personal element to this story. What was the catalyst for you journeying into this work?
Yeah, I'm happy to share. So, I was never a person that was deeply in love with my female body up until maybe about 6 or 7 years ago. At the age of 19, I had my first abnormal pap smear. So when you go and get a pap smear and the results come back abnormal, that's really what initiated me into this work. So I had HPV and cervical dysplasia. And over the course of about 4 years, I went on this journey of really feeling so afraid of my female body. I was constantly being told something was wrong. I was actually shamed by my doctors for like having too much sex. And that's why I was having all these abnormalities, and having an STI, which is what HPV is, just creates so much shame and like self loathing. Like, wow, why is this happening to me? That, I really went through a very dark time associating with being a woman, associating with having this body. And actually, it got to a point where I would actually physically abuse myself. Like, I would take my fist and like punch my own womb because I was so upset that I was having all these things wrong with me. 4 years of consistent worsening abnormal pap smears and going into the gynecologist and having people poke and prod and scrape and biopsy, it really led me to a place of being like, wow, being in a female body is a curse. But then something miraculous happened where I so for those first 4 years of these abnormal pap smears, I never really felt right with the treatment options. So when you have cervical dysplasia or abnormal cells on your cervix, the doctors really want to kind of funnel you into procedures to remove the cells of the cervix. And had I not looked it up online, like Googled what these procedures were, I probably would have done it, but I actually scared myself. Like, I saw photos and I read stories and forums, and it terrified me to think about having like surgery in my vaginal canal with no anesthesia and then just kind of being sent out the door, being like, okay, you're healed. That didn't feel right to me. So I refused all of their treatment options. And so about 4 years into the journey, I was like, the story is very long and circuitous, and I don't want to necessarily take all the time with the details here, but I was sent away to this very big wig, fancy teaching hospital because I wasn't listening to my doctors. And I was told by this like very, very professional gynecologist that because I wasn't listening to them and following their treatment options, that I was going to get cancer. And I was only like 23 at the time. And they said, "We're sorry, there's nothing more we can do for you. We'll see you when you have cancer, cervical cancer." And so I walked out the door fully believing I was going to die of cervical cancer. And I was like, being in a female body is the worst thing to have ever happened to me, like in my life. But when I went home and I was crying in the shower, there was like this distinct moment of like a light turning on in my body. And for the first time in my adult life, or in, my memory, I could hear the voice of my body. It was like my body was speaking to me, and my body said, Denell, like, something is clearly wrong. We're going to figure it out if you are willing to do it with me. Like, it was like a conversation. And I walked out of that shower and I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, we're going to do this. We've got this. We're going to figure this out. And so for 3 years after that, I went on this incredible journey of learning everything I could about female anatomy and fertility and the cervix and what is cervical dysplasia and how do people heal, and reconnecting with my menstrual cycle and my moon blood, and continue to have abnormal pap smears. But there was this fortification of strength within me, being like, wow, actually other people have healed miraculous ways. Like, I looked up stories of spontaneous healing, and lo and behold, 7 years after my initial diagnosis, I found out I healed myself. I had SIN 3 cervical dysplasia, which is the highest grade before it goes into precancer, and HPV was no longer present in my body. And when I got that call, my doctor actually called me to tell me on a Saturday, which is kind of strange. Doctors don't call you, and they don't call you on a Saturday, but it was like such a big deal that it was gone. I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, I am probably not the only person to experience this and to feel like self-loathing and self-hatred and fear about our body, about our cervix, about our female anatomy. And it was after that, at that moment, that I decided and felt this like kind of like warrior call to be a voice for the cervix, to be a voice for the healing of the female body in an integrative and holistic way. And so that was about let's see, like six or 7 years ago, and my life has changed since then. I'm now the most in love with my body that I've ever been, and I love being in a female body. I love being a woman. And here we are now talking about it. So it's amazing, what our dark moments can lead us to.
Absolutely. Darkness to Dharma, as they say. And your story is so amazing, and like such a light for someone who's maybe in those depths right now listening. And I think whether you've had, an abnormal pap smear or not, even as you were speaking, like I've never had an abnormal pap, but I could just resonate with pieces of that shame that so many of us carry or have carried before about being a woman, having a pussy, like living in a feminine body, like in this world that we're in. And we're taught to be afraid of our own bodies. So like, I love it when I see you on Instagram and you're like, cervix told me to do this, cervix told me to do that. And I'm like, if someone totally new just finds Denell's page, they're probably like, what? Like, and on that note, a lot of people now want to get in touch with, say, their intuition or their gut feeling. And a lot of people talk about how they feel that in their tummy or they feel that in their belly. But the way that I hear you talk about cervix, it almost like says to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that like you're listening to this deeper inner knowing that's living in your cervix. So
Yes.
can you tell us about it?
Yes, I actually consider cervix to be the oracle of our body. So, people will pull tarot cards or oracle cards. I practice, okay, let me drop into my cervix and see what cervix says today. So cervix is, I consider, the bridge between our inner world and our outer world. So for those of you who are like, I don't even know what a cervix is, or what is she talking about? Because it's not our fault. We aren't taught this. Like, I didn't know what a cervix was, or anything about it until I taught myself. So cervix sits at the end of the vaginal canal. So like when you have a speculum inside of you, or like when, like if you're opened up, you can like peer into the vaginal canal and you see the cervix at the end. Cervix is a part of the uterus, so it's actually a part of the organ of the uterus. It's the neck of the uterus. It's also the tip. So the cervix is pretty thick. She's about 2 to 3 inches thick, but the place of the cervix that I work with is the face of the cervix, which is the part that's exposed in the vaginal canal. So cervix is the portal through which, babies are birthed through, out of the womb. It's the portal through which semen enters into the womb. And on a more energetic level, cervix is a bridge. It's a bridge between this like outer reality and the inner depths of the female body, of like inside of the pelvis. So, the face of the cervix holds the termination point of the vagus nerve. So you might have heard about the vagus nerve. It's one of the 12 cranial nerves that come out the back of the neck, or about back of the skull. And unlike the other cranial nerves, which go into the spinal cord, this nerve snakes through our entire body and innervates most of the major organs. It connects to our throat, our trachea, our heart, our lungs, our kidneys, and it like comes down the top of the womb, wraps around the womb, and terminates, it ends in the face of the cervix. So for me, when I connect with my cervix, I am bringing my awareness all the way down my body, even deeper than my womb. Some of us just stop at our womb, but I'm like, no, let's go even deeper to this face of the cervix. And when we do that, because of this vagus nerve, we're actually connecting to the intelligence of our entire torso. And our body holds so much wisdom, so much intelligence, and for me, it guides me in every single moment. So if I need guidance, yes, we can connect to our heart, we can connect to our stomach or solar plexus, but I have found, especially within the last 3 or 4 years, that if I want true, like really on point, sometimes like things you don't want to hear, guidance, I will connect all the way down to my cervix and ask my body from that place. And Amy, the wisdom that pours through from this place is astounding, and it's changed my life in ways that I could never have envisioned. And it changed the life of many of my clients, where they're like, Denell, I didn't realize what I was missing until I connected with my cervix.
Amazing. Amazing. Now, as you were speaking, I know if I heard a conversation like this maybe 5 years ago, I would have been like, what the fuck is going on? Similar to what you said of like, some of us don't even know where the cervix is. We've never seen one,
Right.
because these images get censored on the internet. I know you can't even really use the word cervix in your captions on Instagram because they get removed. And so how do we start like connecting to this space, and what are some of the other benefits that are going to come for women when they do connect to it? Because sometimes I think when things are like really weirdly spiritual, like we're into them, we're like, the weirder the better, but sometimes
Right.
people need to know, like they need to know like the why. They need to know like what's going to happen if I go into those steps, like what's that going to bring to my life, or even like addressing why are we so afraid to even touch our own cervix would be like a good starting point as well.
Right. Okay. What can you repeat the first question out
Yeah.
of that series?
Yeah. So what are some of the other benefits for someone who's like never touched their cervix,
Right.
Is afraid to, doesn't know
Right.
why they should, like what are some of the powerful things that can come
Right.
with this work?
Mm, mm. So the first thing that is coming through that wants to be spoken is a deeper sense of self-confidence. So when women come and work with me, very often I'll just speak for myself too. We live in the upper portion of our bodies. And
Mm.
the reason why so many of us don't connect to the depths of our pelvis is because we have a lot of pain there. There's a lot of trauma, whether that's sexual or reproductive or gynecological. I mean, there's a lot of traumatic experiences that happen in the gynecologist's office. And so it's just easier for us to live our life not with our awareness in our pelvis. So when we start this process of connecting with our cervix, either just with our mind, like again, bringing our awareness down, or if we feel comfortable to like using our fingers to enter into ourselves and like feel around and touch our cervix ourselves, what happens is one that we become faced with what we are afraid of looking at. So, cervix is the story keeper of our body. So, everything that has ever penetrated you, both physically and energetically, cervix remembers that. And so if we are willing to look at these shadowy parts, these shadowy stories of our history of our body, and we are willing to allow our body to reveal to us these stories, what comes out on the other side is this deeper sense of confidence within the female form. And one of the major aha moments for me and many of my clients is like, they say to me, Denell, I feel like I can stand up for myself more. I feel like my voice is stronger. I feel like I don't allow others' desires of me to sway my decisions. So codependency recovery becomes more widely available. And so those are more of the like behavioral life experiences. But on a physical level, when we connect with our cervix and we open our awareness to this place in our pelvis, we can experience more pleasure. We can experience more availability of orgasm or just feeling open to penetration by our lover and not have it be so like tight and painful and scary. Um, so those are the two pieces that are coming through that want to be spoken around, yeah, confidence in body and openness to our sexuality and to our sexual pleasure and being penetrated, because cervix at the end of the vaginal canal, like oftentimes when we're deeply penetrated, for those of us who perhaps have trauma in the cervix, like that can be really painful to have deep penetration. And when we work with our cervix and let our cervix share with us what it's holding on to, and we work with that, that pain diminishes and that tightness opens up and expansion happens in our pelvis. And, you know, we can feel open and juicy and pleasurable, all those good things. Yeah.
Amazing. It's
Hmm.
it's interesting, like as you were talking, I was just reflecting and thinking about past experiences of my own and having been through this work for a few years. And I remember I've only just kind of like put this loop together now that around the time that I was getting a lot of throat infections and my rock bottom moment happened, it occurred when I had pneumonia actually, and I couldn't use my voice. And not long before that, around the same time, I actually ruptured my cervix. I was like in a really like quite emotionally abusive relationship, what I thought was a relationship. I was actually just being gaslit. But around that time, these two things were happening in my body. And it's really interesting to see that link between the pelvis, between the womb space, the cervix, and the throat. And I think one of the most powerful things I ever saw was like seeing the photographs side by side of your vocal cords and the feminine anatomy. And I was like,
Hmm.
whoa, okay, these are totally linked. Like, how have I not put this together before? So I really loved the piece that you were sharing around like being more confident, like speaking your truth, being more anchored in who you are. But I feel like most people wouldn't think like, hey, I want to be more confident. I want to have a more powerful expressed voice. I'm going to journey down into my vagina right now.
Right. Right. Well, these are the things that like no like sex education, at least in Western countries, like they just completely ignore all of these magical things. And when we were actually in utero at the very beginning of conception, so like in the first few stages, like when the sperm meets the egg and the cells start to replicate, that the throat and the pelvis actually started as the same cell, and then like the same place. And then as we grew and like we kind of unfolded in what's called a kyphotic curve, like the two places become, I mean, the one place becomes two places. So it's like we have the same, this tissue of the inside of our cheeks is the same exact type of cells as our vaginal canal. And so it's all deeply interconnected. I'm happy that you brought this up.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I always say whenever like I'm with Tristan and we like do oral sex, I'm like, you're getting like a taste of power right now. Like
Mm.
you're getting these juicy, powerful tissues right now that are like the source of so much wisdom and like forgotten medicine. And he's like, yeah, I'm on board with that.
Yay. Yes. Men
Yeah.
loving the divine feminine.
Yeah.
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 Mm,
So
mm,
I know your work at the moment is like taking almost like not a different direction, but
mhm.
you're in this stage that we find ourselves in often as spiritual entrepreneurs where we're like, okay, I've evolved and now like my business is coming with me. And you're like going down this amazing pathway right now of like, you know, embracing more of that dark goddess, embracing mysticism, like going a little bit more like, should we say woo woo with your work and like
Yeah.
deepening this cervical priestess work that you do. So I would love to talk about this idea of embracing the dark goddess and
Mm,
what that actually means in like a very practical sense for people. Because I think that it's very it's very fun and very almost like I don't know, like happy and like almost a bit cool to like connect to your goddesses. You know, the really like floaty ones, the
right.
ones that seem really beautiful and seem really earthly, but then it's like so many of us, and particularly in the spiritual world where you get like a lot of bypassing, is like that
Mhm.
full bypassing of some of these dark goddess energies, like the anger, the sacred rage, like all of these pieces that are so important to being feminine, but so many of us deny it. So what is your process of connecting to the dark goddess energy?
Mm, 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 I love this question. Yeah, so to me, the way that I approach dark goddess energy is from the lens of my own body. And the way that I see the dark goddess, just as a whole, not like a specific dark goddess, not like Kali or Pele, but just like the dark goddess energy as being like the primordial beginnings energy, like ancient creatrix energy, like the before there's a spark of light, there's the darkness, the void. And cervix to me is the like anchor of this type of energy within our body, because it is in like the deep dark recesses of our pelvis. To me, womb energy feels very like light and like creative and generative, and even yoni energy is like ooh, pleasurable and juicy. But there's something about cervix as being this portal place, this place of like in between worlds, that has come to me as being, oh, this is actually the dark energy anchor of the female form. And so the way that I think about it is like dark goddess is this keeper of the in between. It's like there isn't this it's like before we have the idea, or before we have the energy to create something, there is the void, there is the spaciousness. like when something dies and before something is reborn, there's that in between time. And to me, that is the power of the dark goddess energy, is actually relaxing and sinking into that void space. So how I work with dark goddess energy within me is one, connecting with my cervix. So there's a visual that I use often, which is like I'll bring my awareness to the center of my brain, and then like a stone falling through water, just like drop it down, and like it like boom, like lands and anchors into the cervix. And from there, because cervix is this keeper of the in between, when we listen to the wisdom that arises from this place, and when I say the wisdom that arises from this place, this can look like feelings, it can look like visions or memories or sensations, different thoughts that emerge, like when our awareness is here, that I have found is the voice of my dark goddess within. Like, because it is this void space, this portal between the outside world of, all around here, and the inside world of my body. The face of the cervix, or cervix, is like revealing to me through these visions or feelings or memories or thoughts, what is potential, what can I bring through, like what is waiting in the wings of the darkness within me to come into the light. And so to me, dark goddess within is really guiding us to becoming more of who we are. So when we deny this energetic within us, and we just try to be in the light, fun, airy, joyful state, that we aren't allowing ourselves to tap into what is awaiting to be birthed. I feel like I might be sounding a little woo-woo or out there, but there's a real medicine to getting comfortable with like our inner darkness. Like, what are we hiding? What are we hiding within us? And how can we allow that to come out, to see the light of day? And when we do that, whether that's like a creative expression, or how we dress, or how we show ourselves in the world, when we actually allow those pieces that we're hiding in the darkness to come out, that's where our power emerges. That's where the confidence emerges. That's where like openness and expansion emerges. But when we deny these pieces of ourselves, when we deny our dark goddess, who is trying to bring forth pieces of us from the void into the world, it becomes corrosive. It's wanting to flow out, but when we stop it, it starts to petrify or putrefy, and it becomes corrosive. And I actually had a vision once on a mushroom journey that this denial and like repression of this dark goddess energy within us is actually what is causing all of these reproductive health issues that is like a epidemic right now. Almost every single woman that I know in my life has had or has some sort of reproductive health issue. And I now know, just in my body, in my life, that I'm like, oh, this is the repression of this like primordial dark goddess essence that's wanting us to birth who we actually are in the world. I hope that made sense. I'm happy to clarify.
Yeah, it definitely does. And as you were talking, I was thinking about like how much of this is related to how that has been suppressed within the feminine for centuries, like through the colonization of birthing, through the patriarchal colonization of menstruation, and even menstruation products like tampons, and just the way that those very like primal, darker, messier pieces of being a woman were essentially shoved in a box. And it was like, if you open that box, we'll burn you at the stake, or we'll ridicule you, or you will be persecuted or like rejected from this society. And because we don't like live back in those times when it commenced, it's just normal now. It's like
Mhm.
normal for us to, not want to have your period, or to just skip it on the pill, or put a
Yeah.
tampon in, or to you numb your whole birthing process out. Like, it's just the way that things are, quote unquote. And then it's like the rise of all of these problems. I just think, like, why are we still denying these parts of ourselves?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Or like having them be taboo, or, having women who go through abortion or miscarriage, like feeling like they can't actually talk about it. Like these darker experiences of the female body, we have been told that they're shameful or ugly or gross, or, oh, it makes me feel bad when you share about these things. And I'm here to say, like, actually we need to accept these pieces. We like let our blood flow out of our yoni freely. Like, let's like share with our friends that we lost a pregnancy. We don't have to do this alone anymore. And our dark goddess within, and to me, like the dark goddess of our world, is like, no, like, let's bring the sanctity, the sacredness back of these darker female experiences, because it's really, those are the experiences that create life actually around us, is through our blood, is through our grief and through our sorrow. We open ourselves up more to life and beauty and potential. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very powerful.
Yeah. And it's like all these juicy parts of life are messy and twisted and like a bit weird and animalistic. Like, think of when you have like amazing, like dirty sex. It's just like
Yes.
crazy. Like, it's not orderly, it's not polite. Like, and
Right.
same with birth, it's like primal. And, um, women often talk about, particularly those, who home birth, or have a very like unmedicated birth, will say like it's almost like they get transported to this different version of who they are in that moment,
Mhm.
in that experience. And then life is created and brought onto the planet. And it's like,
Right.
I think we just try and tidy ourselves up all the time as women.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, you were speaking to the history of like what happened to women when we weren't tidy, like we were killed or burned at the stake. And I mean, even just at the turn of the 20th century, like if women were hysterical, like showing too much emotion, they were put into an insane asylum for who knows how long. And so, us reclaiming this within our body and within our life, we are healing timelines, and we are changing the way things have been for centuries. And so it makes sense that many of us are afraid that we have this like witch wound, or we have this feeling in our heart that, oh my gosh, something really terrible is going to happen if I do this. And those can be, genetic memories from the past. But we live in a society now, at least in Western countries, where we're not going to be killed for being who we are. Other women in other countries unfortunately do face these same issues, but for those of us who can do this work and embody our dark feminine essence, it's time for us to do that on behalf of the other women who cannot, as we move on into a world where this is accepted and honored. Yeah.
Mm, amazing. I was reading something the other day. I'm not sure if you know about this or you've read it as well. And it was talking about how when Christianity was really coming to power, how a lot of the other traditions, people started being persecuted or killed for things like the pagan, traditions. And they used to do these kind of like sexy dance moves, and they had these like sexy dance rituals. And when Christianity came along and this was colonized and society was colonized, obviously these new ways of dancing came to be, and it was very like rigid dancing, like almost like ballroom dancing. And if you weren't allowed to like move your hips in a certain way because it was considered very like provocative and sinful. And so I was reading this thing, can't remember where it was, and it was saying how like a lot of women that come from like European and Christian lineages, we actually don't have this same movement and like vitality in our pelvic region anymore, because there's like this fear in our bodies of like, I am not allowed to move like that.
Mhm.
And I was like, this is insane.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, I experienced that in my own body. Like when I first started to try to twerk, like I felt like I was like trying to move like a concrete block like in my hips. I was like, why? I'm like watching all these amazing like um women online doing it. I'm like, why can't my body move that like that? But over time, as I have been practicing just moving my hips in these ways, a lot of emotion comes up, a lot of shame. Like again, these like memories that aren't mine emerge, and we are like breaking up the restriction that has been placed upon women of European lineage. It's a real thing. That's a real thing. I mean, we have like ballet and ball dance, but like I want to get down in the dirt. Yeah.
Yeah, I still can't twerk. Like, I'll just say
Me
that.
neither. I tried really hard.
Me too. I really wish I could. But I'm not there yet. But I do know, like, since I've been doing more of these practices of like sensual dancing, like there's a lot more fluidity in my body. And I feel like that's really encouraging for people to hear. Like, even if right now you're in a place where you're like, I'm not sexy, I can't move like my hips, I can't do that. Like, these things can be rebuilt and cultivated in the body.
Yes, yes. Just put on some music and just, I really like to envision my hips like on a swivel. So, like, here's the spine and here's your hips. I like to envision my hips are on a swivel and I try to move them in all the directions, and it builds up a lot of heat in the body too. And so it's a really great movement exercise. I highly recommend it. Yeah.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Um, okay. So I'll edit this bit out, but what do you want me to ask you next? And also, is there someone talking in the background of where you are?
He's in the other part of the house. Do you want me to tell him to stop? Can you hear it?
I can hear it quite loudly, just so you know.
Really?
I don't want to
Oh
have to
my,
like re-record. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah. Let me,
only
let
just
me,
like the last like couple of minutes. So
okay, because he's on a phone call with his client. Hold on. Hey, John. John, can you step outside? Okay, we can just hear you. Okay. What if I don't have a door? It's like a curtain.
a shower curtain. I can't hear anything now, so let's just see, and I'll just pause if it happens.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
I know your frustrations. My husband's the same, and if I ask him to be quiet, he's like, "No, fuck off."
Yeah. Well, he's working, so I'm like,
Yeah,
this is what happens when we both work from home.
yeah, I know. And then like each person thinks their thing is like the more important work. So then it's just like Tristan does the same thing. He'll like go and do a live. We've got this massive house, and he'll go and do a live stream like in the kitchen, where in the only place where I like could walk and get food. So it's like, and then like facing it. So then I'll try and come in. I'm like, I need to eat. And he's like, I'm on a live, fuck off. And I'm like,
Oh gosh. Yeah, I can hear him talking right now. I'm wondering if I should move my setup.
Whatever feels good for you, because I don't want it to like distract you as well, like, or whatever feels. I'm gonna edit all this middle bit out anyways.
Right. Okay, give me one moment. I'm gonna go walk out there. Can you give me 1 minute?
Sure. So I know you work a lot with this realm of earth mysticism, and something that I love and that I know loads of people are curious about is this sacred ritual of offering our menstrual blood back to the earth. And I know that you go even deeper with this, where it's like you're connecting to certain like spirits or messages in the land, and that the land has its own, I guess, like consciousness and soul that can speak to you. And I would love to just, I don't even know what my question is, but I would just love to just go into this realm, because I know for some people maybe they're really curious about how they can like offer their menstrual blood to the earth, and they just don't really know where to start.
Yeah, I would love to talk about this. So, as we were saying before we got on the call, like I'm just kind of coming out of the closet around this idea of being a land psychic and like being able to connect and speak to land. And so, the way that I approach this sort of practice is in recognizing that what I call like the more than human world. So, like the elements and the plants and the trees and the animals, that they are also conscious. And places on the earth hold different consciousnesses as well. Like there's Glastonbury or, Sedona, or, these places that are like vortexes. It's the land that makes these places unique. That each land has its own energetic signature, its own feeling, its own um, healing capacity. You go to the desert to maybe, you know, burn away parts of yourself and have different visions versus going to the mountains or going to the beach or the tropics. Like land holds different frequencies. And another part about land and blood is actually earth, land, and like plants and trees, they actually live and survive on blood. So it has actually been shown that, like in cemeteries, when they will dig up graves from hundreds of years ago, that actually tree roots will have penetrated into the coffin and like wrapped around the body and have like basically sourced up, sucked up all of the flesh and the blood of the body. And if you think back to centuries ago or even thousands of years ago, this idea of like blood offering to the land or to the gods, um, it holds a magic that no other sort of offering else provides. But unlike like cultures like the Aztecs, where they had to like kill people to get a blood offering, women, we have a blood offering available every single month. And so when we collect our blood, whether that's through a cup, or what I do is I'll use reusable cloth pads and like soak it in water, cold water, and like take the cup of the water. And like you find a place that you love or that has supported you in some way. I always love to invite my clients to find a tree that they really love, because all of us, if we think about it, there's been like one tree in our life that is like, oh, that tree really held me, or like that I really love that tree. There's a relationship there, and how beautiful to be able to offer this very sacred liquid from our body, this that could have been new life, um, to offer it to this place, this land, this tree, this plant. And if we open our minds and our hearts up to the knowing and reality that this land or this tree or this place also is conscious, that when we give a gift of our blood to this place, that place will give us a gift back. The law of reciprocity is, all encompassing, that which you give, you also receive. And so I have found that in my personal practice of collecting my blood and giving it to the land, that especially I was just on Maui, and I don't live there, but I had 3 bleeds there. And every time that I collected my blood and like gave it to the land there, like within the next few days, the most amazing synchronicities happened, where I was like walking down the street and this is like perfect mango like fell from a tree and like landed in front of me. And I was like, oh, like this tree just gifted me a mango. And these sorts of things, like really beautiful, magical moments arise on the land in nature when you give your blood. Like maybe you'll give your blood, and then a few minutes later, like a glorious butterfly flies by, or you see a hawk or a really beautiful bird. Like these are all messages from the land. I was like, I thank you. Like, we've received your gift, we've received your blood, your offering. We're now going to give you our medicine, our magic. And it might have been the Dalai Lama who said this. I don't exactly remember who said this, but it is said that when women start returning their blood to the earth, all war will stop. Because it is, when you think about how in ancient cultures, or back in more of like goddess centric cultures, like women were giving their blood to the earth all the time, like that every moon cycle, every menstrual cycle, they would give to the earth, they would give it to the earth. But then when those cultures were colonized and, repressed, the earth, the land still needed blood. It's how it's like rejuvenates the spirit of the land by receiving blood. And so then I've been thinking about this, like, wow, I'm wondering if like all these places where there's a lot of war happening, like a lot of humans killing other humans and shedding blood on the land, what if like it's the land cultivate, like creating those sorts of energies to receive the blood. And so for us as women to give our blood willingly to the land, we are nourishing the earth, we are nourishing the planet, and providing spiritual sustenance in a way that is harmonic and healthy and whole and integrative. And we don't have to have like blood sacrifices anymore, because we as women can be the priestesses that honor the land, that honor the earth, that honor humanity on the earth. And it's a very powerful thing when you think about it, to give this, this stuff isn't the right word, this blood that like has shed from our wombs, stem cells and all the amazing potentials that could have been a new human form. And instead of just flushing it down the toilet or having it soak up in a tampon and throwing it in the trash, to just give it back to the earth. It's like we're completing the cycle.
Mm.
And I feel like that is the medicine right there. We're completing the cycle, and
Mm.
it's what our planet needs right now.
Yeah, wow, on so many levels. Another thing like that I noticed in myself when I mean, first I transitioned from tampons to a cup, and then at some point my uni was like, I don't want the cup anymore. And so then I now use like period pants, and I do what you do, where I
Yeah.
just soak them in water so I can return it. It took me a while to figure that out. I was like, no, I don't have my cup anymore. How am I going to collect the blood? And then smarty pants figured that one out.
Yeah.
But something that I noticed as I started doing this ritual was like, I felt this deeper connection to Mama Earth, because I
Mhm.
was like, okay, wow, like we're in a relationship and I'm thinking about you each month. And then I would get excited to like for all the blood to collect. And then I would be this beautiful little offering and almost a ceremonial moment. And sometimes I'd like be like manifesting things and being like, support me with this. And I felt really good. And then like on a more, I guess like ethical level, I think I just felt better in myself knowing that I wasn't putting tampons into landfill,
Mhm.
um, just from like a perspective of having this deep respect for the earth and being like, I don't want to do that anymore. Why would I do that when I can have this beautiful ceremony with you? Like it's such a no-brainer to me. And um I think it's really cool we're having this conversation, because we just don't know these things unless we hear
Right.
people talking about them.
Right. And, I have people say to me, like, well, Danelle, I live in a big city. Like, I don't have nature all around me. I'm like, there are trees that are lining those city streets, and maybe they're like encompassed, like surrounded by concrete or something. But you can like pour it on the trunk and it will go down and will go there, or go to a park. All major cities have little parklets where there's like grass and some bushes or whatnot. Like you can access land wherever you are. And especially in major cities, that land is probably like really, really wanting some honoring and really, really wanting some of your love by way of this practice. So,
Mm.
mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I watched this really amazing documentary the other day. I don't know if you've seen it, and it was called The Secret of Water. I know you
Mhm.
read an amazing book that you were telling me about. I think it
Mhm.
was called Water Codes.
It was called Water Codes. I haven't seen the movie, or The Secret of Water, but I'm wondering if it's about the same
It's
thing.
probably about something similar. And this documentary, it like blew me away. It's on Gaia, and it was talking about like the properties of water, not only for healing and restoration, and the fact that water is basically like the force of life and it like
Mhm.
exists in all life,
Yeah.
but it was also talking about how water has a memory,
Mhm.
and how everything that touches water, or the even the plastic bottle that it sits in, or the pipes that it moves through, or the words that you say in its presence, the songs that the water is listening to, it actually has
Mm.
scientifically an impact on the cellular structure of the water. And then I started thinking, like, I'm definitely going to talk to Denell about this, because the womb is like this watery space, right? And a lot of our, if we think of our sexual experience, like it's liquids, it's water, it's amrita, it's semen, it's birth and blood and all of that stuff. So, do you think that the things that we say about ourselves, or about our wombs, or even just the things that we say in our lives, imprint in some way in our bodies, and particularly like
Mm.
in our cervix space?
Yes, I'm so happy you brought this up. I've just been working with this in my mastermind called Into the Deep, which is a dark goddess initiation, um, talking about how our bodies are like 85% water. And yes, through just our intention, through our mind, through, and especially through the words we speak, through the vibration of our resonance of our voice, that we literally encode the water of our body in its structure with these words, with these thoughts. And there's in this book Water Codes that I read, which I need to watch this documentary, because this book Water Codes also speaks about the structure of water and how malleable it is. Like it can change in an instant. um, how even just like thinking about something can, in the presence of water, can change it. And you can try to think about something else, but if your subconscious is thinking about it, or if it's running those programs, water will respond to what your subconscious is saying. That you actually you cannot lie around water. Water will always encode and structure itself to the truth of what you are emitting. So, in regards to the cervix and the womb and our pelvic health, yes, 100%, 110%, yes, that the thoughts that we are having about our female body definitely impact the structure of the water within these cells. And actually, in the book Water Codes, I learned that all of our DNA, so the double helix strand of our DNA, is entirely encased in water molecules. So it's the water molecules that actually create the structure of our DNA. So when we just have perpetual negative thoughts, or say things to ourselves out loud that are negative, or like me in the past, like hitting myself and saying like I hate my womb, no wonder my cervix got more and more angry, and like the cervical dysplasia worsened, because I was abusing myself, and the water within me was structuring to that and creating my body to reflect that. So I really feel like this, the research around water and the structure of water and how we interact with it in our body and in the world and in life, is like the cutting edge of health, is the cutting edge of where science and spirituality meet. Because if you think about, like all the religions that have like water as like a central place, like there's a reason behind that. And
Mm.
we can truly change, like for going back to cervix and pelvic health, we can truly change our health trajectory, our wellness trajectory, just through the power of our thoughts and our mind. And a lot of the work I do around the cervix and helping women support themselves to heal their cervix themselves is around the mindset change, is around how do we think about our female body, how do we relate to being a woman, uh, because that's really foundational. I'm so glad you
Yeah.
brought that up.
I can't wait to read this book. As you were talking, I had this like flash memory of something in this show that is so related to this. And in one of the experiments, they got some water and some rice in three different jars. And the guy who was doing the experiment, he said something really beautiful to one. And I think it was like, thank you, bless you, or something. Then to the next one, he said something awful, like, you're an idiot. And then the last one, he ignored. He just didn't look at it. And over the space of time that they did this experiment, the one that he had said something nice to, it had the rice had sprouted in the water and it was like making that like beautiful like sprouting and fermentation odor. The one that he had said the mean thing to was molding, but it was like that kind of greeny mold. And the one that he had rejected and totally ignored had gone fully black. And
Wow.
they were saying that, like, I think they were relating it to like ignoring children and like the detrimental effect of like abandonment and just total like neglect. And so I was just thinking then about like this part of our body, our cervix, our womb, that so many of us ignore, that we pretend it doesn't exist. And it's like, what's the effect of that if we
Yes.
don't pay attention to the sacred part of our body?
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh, this is so powerful. Like one of the things that I say all the time in my programs and with my work is that actually these things that are wrong with your cervix or wrong with your womb or your ovaries, it's actually your body like calling out to you to say like, please love me here. Like look at me, bring your awareness here, touch me, like rub oil over me, like massage me, please pay attention to me. And that was one of the biggest aha moments in my cervical healing journey, was that, oh, actually this dysplasia is my cervix just crying, wanting me to look at it. And when we look at it, that's when we can get scared because it's trying to tell us all these things. But we must listen and we must integrate what it's trying to tell us. That ignoring it or pretending it's not there or just disassociating from our pelvis does not make things better. It perpetuates the issue and it's just really wanting our love and attention. Oh, this is so powerful. I'm so happy you brought that up.
And
Yeah.
it led you to who you are now, right? The
Yes.
the darkness led you to the thing that you were born to do.
Right, right. Isn't it interesting how life works that way? Like the most painful experiences of my life. Like I've had many dark pelvic experiences that I haven't mentioned here, but it's from those experiences that I gleaned the wisdom and the know-how and just the life experience to now be a voice for this work and help guide like thousands of women from around the world to do the same on behalf of their life. So anybody who's listening, if you're going through a dark time, just like trust your body and trust that the dark goddess, as you're in this void space, is leading you into more alignment, more self-love, and more availability of showing the world who you are in your unique expression. Yeah.
Mm, So powerful.
Mm.
My love, thank you so much. This has been so deep and rich and meaningful and like medicine. So thank you. Can you let our listeners know where to find you, your Instagram profile, etc.?
Yeah, so find me on Instagram at Denell Barbara. It's Denell, Denell _Barbara. And right now my website is cervicalwellness.com, but over the next month and a half, that's actually going to be changing to denellbarbara.com. But in the meantime, you can find me at cervicalwellness.com. But Instagram is really the place to find me.
Amazing. Beautiful. Thank you so much.